Well, welcome to the Gary Neville Podcast. We're here at Anfield. The place is still rocking because, as I think we put it at the end, Liverpool showed that they're capable of getting back into business. A famous win for them.
Yes, and I think that City are that good that only feels like there are probably a few grounds that they could possibly lose at, and this is one of them. And it's always been the same, this ground. He said during the game a few times that daft things can happen here, called it the madhouse. The crowd were up for it. The first 5 minutes of the game, you could feel that passion in the stadium, and then City start to play the football, and they just hung in there. Liverpool dug in. They revived the spirit that we know they've got. They've had it for 4 or 5 years. You can't achieve what they've achieved. Matching City in many different areas. I know not always winning the titles, but they've won one. They've got a chance of Champions League finals. But it was a mesmerising last 20 minutes, 25 minutes. I think from that City goal being disallowed to the end of the game was one of the most... I've got a headache. I feel like you've almost got this sort of massive, you said, event that's just taken place. And that's how I remember massive games, the build-up to it, the feeling of two big sides, great managers coming together with this fantastic world-class phenomenon in Haaland. And you forget about Mo Salah. You forget about him, and today we've just seen something pretty spectacular. The right side of Liverpool's defence and Mo Salah, which I think have probably been the two most underperforming areas in the team from where the standards they've set over this last 2, 3, 4 years, I think have been brilliant today. Gomez and Milner and Salah up front, they were really wonderful, and then it was obviously supported by obviously a big effort from everybody else.
Well, do it chronologically, Gary, with the disallowed goal first. It's a tight call. We thought, first of all, that Erling Haaland might have been penalised for knocking the ball
out of Alisson's
hands, yeah. But that wasn't the case.
No, I mean, we saw all of a sudden after probably... You look at that VAR monitor, you think what's happening, because I thought that they were going to be looking at the Haaland-Alisson incident, but then it became apparent that they were looking at an earlier incident between Fabinho and Haaland. Yeah, Haaland on Fabinho. I'm going to ask you, because I said during the commentary that when you see the shirt being pulled like that and it's just a prolonged holding, you sometimes think, well, that's going to be given, and then when you get sent over to the box. But you just made a really good point before we come on here, that Anthony Taylor's position during this match was to consistently let incidents like that go. And does the VAR in Stockley Park have to reflect the fact that that is what the man in the middle wants to do? But Anthony Taylor had an opportunity himself to say, no, I've been letting them go all game, and he decided to actually stand with what would be the referral.
And only a certain number of incidents in certain categories can be referred to VAR. Of goal, or disallowed goal as it turned out, is one of them. So they were quite entitled to get involved.
Did you think it was, Martin? I'm asking you, because I think I don't think you thought it was a free kick, did you?
I see a lot of things going like that, but they don't lead to goals, so they don't get analysed. And in the end, we have VAR for a reason. And of course, Liverpool would tell you that last week at Arsenal, VAR went against them with a couple of penalty calls. So you win some, you lose some. Today they won a vital decision. Had they gone 1-0 down again, who knows where that might have led them. Yeah,
and I think Fabinho, and I say this with actual some praise, he's one of the very best, I think, at falling over and sort of winning free kicks. And he's actually one of the best at giving them away and accumulating fouls and not getting booked. He did get booked eventually today. So I see where you're coming from, but my feeling was that it was going to get called a foul. And it was.
But the Liverpool players were appealing for Alisson, weren't they?
They were. Yeah. They were appealing for the Fabinho one. I mean, Pep Guardiola was absolutely incensed. He was absolutely furious. In fact, he was actually in the first half out of his technical area quite a lot. I just think this is the type... It was the same when I was at United. The feeling coming into this game, the manager was different. Sir Alex was different coming into this game. The boss all week would just be more serious. You just get that look in his eyes that was different, and then you come here and there's just very little talking in the change room before a game like today. Even when you're a really good side, you just feel you come here, you walk out, that you'll never walk alone hits you, and you realise you're into something that's different than most grounds, not just in this country but in Europe.
Last 50 league visits by Manchester City to this ground, 3 wins.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a horrible record here, Manchester City. Obviously, they've not been as good in most of those 50 games as they are in this last few years. But even now, like I say, you come here and Pep Guardiola knows this is as tough as it gets. I think I was down on the touchline half an hour before kickoff, and he was sat in the...
He'd been there for half an hour.
Yeah,
as
in
well.
the dugout for half an hour, just sat there in the dugout. Again, you do things here that you probably don't do elsewhere. You don't normally see him do that at away grounds. So, again, it's just a place that the fans and Liverpool's performances over the last 5 years have meant that they've been confident coming into these games. But I actually felt the crowd today perform like an underdog crowd. You know, clapping throw-ins, cheering throw-ins, tackles, passes, little bits of good quality play where you pass it out to your fullback that they'd just been taken for granted for many years. And it was how we used to, it felt a little bit like when we used to come here, that the sort of like that crowd would be that, try and be that 12th man. And then that has happened here today. I think City recognised that this place is difficult, and Erling Haaland, he had a couple of chances in the first half. He had a header, and then he had that one where he could have, he tried to chip it over Alisson, which is obviously tough to do. But I think, did you say he's lost here to these previous 3 times? He's
lost now to Liverpool, played 4, lost 4, yeah.
Yeah. So that tells you he finds it more
difficult. Including the Community Shield, of course, where he had a couple of really good chances and didn't score. But he was due an off day. It was just the wrong off day as far as City were concerned.
Yeah, and for the league, I mean, if you're Arsenal today, if you're the teams in the league, you recognise that this is an important moment. I think that we think that this is probably one of the only teams that can beat Manchester City. They've done it. It means the league's more competitive, which is what we want, because I'd had that feeling coming into this game and in the last few weeks, maybe even earlier in the season, that City could win this league by 15, 20 points, and they still could. But the longer it goes on, the longer it remains competitive. We don't want that situation whereby our league is won with 10 games to go, 5 games to go. And we've been lucky in the last few years that Liverpool have pushed them close. And it remains to be seen whether others can do that. But we've seen a pretty special day today. It reminds me of big games that I, would playing myself all those years ago. That was just an immense struggle to get to for a player, just thinking about it 2-3 days before, and then the build-up on the day of the game, that sort of different feeling inside your body. That one, I used to say, it's a bit like you sort of, what's the feeling? Like something out of space. You feel like your body's just like completely not yours. You're just in a different zone in your life, whereby you've been taken somewhere where you know that adrenaline and that feeling isn't going to come back when you finish playing football, and I can't describe it, but that's how these players would have been today. I thought of James Milner at right back, and thought of maybe some of the games that I played towards the end of my career against teams and players that were quicker than me and probably better than me and taller than me, and he's just stuck at he has really stuck at it today, James Milner. I thought he epitomised Liverpool. I gave it to Gomez because I thought there was a lot of pressure on that right centre-back today alongside Van Dijk. But Milner, I thought, epitomised what Liverpool were today in terms of their passion, spirit, their energy, their fight. Because he was up against Phil Foden, who still played well. And he was, in the second half, had Bernardo Silva in that channel up against him as well. But he was just tenacious. And I think, like you say, just that epitomised his career, not just Liverpool today, in terms of having to play a different position, one that he probably didn't want to play and certainly doesn't want to play. But he's there again doing a job for the team.
We've got to this stage of the podcast and we haven't talked about the winning goal, which was out of this world.
Did you hear as he turned? I went, I mean, literally, usually that comes sometimes in a big moment in a game when there's a goal goes in. But I just saw him rolling. I thought, he's going to roll João Cancelo. He's got the strength of him. He'd thrown Ake to the ground and Diaz earlier on in the game, so he's definitely going to outmuscle João Cancelo. And then he rolls him, and you're just thinking, can he bring it down? And he does, and it's into his path. And you just remember in that moment what Mo Salah has been for the last 4 or 5 years. And we've missed it in this last, obviously, 2 months in terms of you don't see that. He's not been the same. He's looked a little bit over that far side, just a little bit detached from what's happening at Liverpool.
And to be fair to Jurgen Klopp, he said, I've got to change things, change formation, change personnel, move Salah into the middle, and he gets a goal through the middle.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even at the end when Nunez and Salah were playing together, it looked like what a threat they would be together. But you're right, he took a chance today, Jurgen Klopp. You know, I do listen to Jamie Carragher sometimes, and I'm only joking, but he does know a lot about Liverpool. And all week when I'd spoken to him, he said Liverpool, in fact, in the pre-match build-up, he said Liverpool will go back to 4-3-3, what they know, how they've been playing. But he's done totally the opposite, Jurgen Klopp. He's gone 4-4-2, and he's actually turned it up a notch because he's put Salah up front with Firmino, and he's put Harvey Elliott on that right-hand side and Jota on the left. And I have to say, there were 2 really good performances from Jota and Harvey Elliott today, chasing back and working back to double up with the fullbacks and tucking in midfield. They put a proper shift in. That was a shift I would see from 2 outer midfield players in a 4-4-2 15 years ago. We don't see that too much anymore, where you get your wide player on that side doubling up and playing so close to your fullback, because there's that feeling that fullbacks have to defend one-on-one, and the actual wide player will stay in what will be a half-cheating position to counter-attack and jump forward. They didn't do that today. They didn't take any chances. There was an instance in the first part of the game down here where Jota got a tackle in. I think it was on Haaland in the box. And I was thinking, why is Jota there? You don't normally see Liverpool's wide players back there, but they were today. And it was a really good performance. But Salah...
He'd had 2 chances, hadn't he?
He had. I mean, the one before that was...
the sensational save by Ederson, and then the one where we expected him to bend it into the corner and he didn't.
Yeah, the first one he didn't do a lot wrong. I mean, I thought there was just brilliant goalkeeping from Ederson. That little touch, little nick off his tips of his right hand. But then as he went through for that goal, I never thought he was missing. I just thought he's not going to miss it. This is definitely going to go in the back of the net. And if you just look at what he did differently, he just lifts it. And Ederson goes low again and tries to obviously to make that similar type of save, but Mo Salah just lifts it and just scoops it up, maybe only a metre off the ground, but that's the difference between the first one where Ederson gives it that little nick round the corner and he can't get there for the second one. So he's used that experience of that first one-on-one. I said after the first one-on-one, he'll probably not get one of those again, and he did. But he did through his own brilliance. The brilliant bit, I mean, look, the finish is fantastic. Don't get me wrong, to beat Ederson from any distance is good. But the brilliant bit is that first bit, of that turn, that roll. It's really special. That's I can't even put into words. You know, for those who play football, they'll know how difficult that is. For those who watch football, they'll see how rare that is.
How did Cancelo get isolated in that situation?
I've not even looked at that, to be honest with you. Do you know something? Even on the replays, it tells you how good a goal it was, because I would ordinarily always look at it from a point of view, how the defender's not got back. Where was the cover? Yeah. Why is Cancelo not just let him bring it down away from goal and let him take it back? Because it was that good. I mean, there's no doubt João Cancelo could have just stayed a couple of yards behind Mo Salah, let him bring it down, let his teammates recover, and that would have been the safe thing to do. But City don't play that way. City play front foot, they step in front, they try and win the ball. And I don't know how he's ended up one-on-one. I mean, João Cancelo is someone who's really quick. And the thing with City is that Kyle Walker does that role brilliantly for them. He always plays in that role because he's the quickest and he's strong. And you see when he's not playing today, João wouldn't have been there. He would have been in a different position, higher up the pitch towards the edge of the box. And Kyle Walker would have been a lot more difficult for Mo Salah to turn and roll than João Cancelo. But he found himself one-on-one, and maybe just a little bit of naivety from Cancelo, just to sort of not, if you like, think, hang on a minute, I've seen Ake been thrown to ground. I've seen that Diaz has been thrown to ground by Salah. I'm unlikely to be able to outmuscle him. And he's just done a little bit naive in front. I remember there were some players, I was relatively strong for my size in terms of my body shape, but there were certain players that you'd have to respect, that they could get their body in and the backside into you, and you aren't getting the ball. You're just not getting there. So you might as well just stand a yard off them. I don't think João Cancelo probably worked that out and assessed it enough. Well done to Alisson. He saw the opportunity develop, but the brilliant, the mesmerising bit is from the centre forward, because he's just done something that's just spectacular.
Last word on the game, and we have to involve Anthony Taylor. And in fact, and ask you, it's a semi-last word. Jurgen Klopp getting sent off. What would she read into that? Was that him just getting fed up with decisions, physicality decisions not going?
He was right. I mean, he was right with the actual decision, that Mo Salah and Bernardo Silva in the corner. But you know, Pep Guardiola was charging out of the technical area. Jurgen Klopp's charging out of the technical area. He's obviously gone for the assistant referee and gone into his face.
The offence was right in front of him.
He's basically he's screened right in the assistant referee's face and gone up to him in a. It's not a threatening manner from an aggression point of view in terms of physical aggression, but it's aggressive towards an official, and that's why he's been sent off. And I'm sure he'll apologise for the fact that he's done that, but I don't blame him. I mean, the amount of times that I've seen myself, teammates, managers in games like this where this atmosphere, Martin, was off the scale.
Well, was it because Anthony Taylor refereed it, as I said, like you call it a throwback? I couldn't imagine how far back we went with it, really, but we've been really supportive of the way referees have done it, and we feel as broadcasters we've benefited from that kind of officiating. Did it go slightly wrong at the end, or would you say, well done, Anthony Taylor, full stop, 100%?
I'd say well done, Anthony Taylor, for his approach to the game, 100%. However, he got a couple wrong. He let a couple of what would be fouls, obvious fouls, that basically weren't blown up. He just said, get on with it, which we've been asking for that for years, haven't we? Have the fans not been asking for that for years? Have we as pundits and commentators not been saying...
And players have stopped rolling about a bit, haven't they? Because they know the game's going to go on.
We're in a far better position, refereeing-wise, now than we were 10, 15 years ago. Anybody who sits here, it's like when football players that have played the game sit here and say, 15 years ago, that game would have been like this. Honestly, you're kidding yourselves. I played 12, 15 years ago, and I'm telling you, what we're watching in this league in this last couple of years and this season is an unbelievable level. Honestly, from a fitness point of view, from a quality point of view, from a tactics point of view, a technical point of view, and from a managerial and coaching point of view, this is as high as it gets. That period in mid-2000s when it was Benitez, Wenger, Sir Alex Ferguson and Jose Mourinho, that was a very, very sweet period for English football. Make no mistake about it, this is as good, if not better, because they're absolutely outstanding. The players' levels of fitness and quality is unbelievable. And the games that we're seeing, Martin, I see very few poor games, particularly when the top 6 clubs are involved.
And at a time when VAR is still getting criticised, surely we should be congratulating the officials for most of the match without VAR getting involved, giving us maybe this slightly more lenient approach. Maybe I take the word slightly away, this more lenient approach.
But coming back to it, but the point I was going to make is anybody who says that refereeing was better 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, it's a nonsense. It's an absolute nonsense. To referee and stay up with this group of players at the speed that they're working at, we can't get things right after 4 replays. We're watching things 2 and 3 times, and they're getting things right in real time, probably 85, 90, maybe more % of the time. Anthony Taylor today demonstrated what a very confident, assured referee that can do. Not worried about his assessor in the stand. He's had a lot of big games. He's got the ability to be able to cope with the fact he might have made 1 or 2 small errors during the match, and he's got VAR as backup for that. But actually what we saw today was a World Cup referee who actually has allowed a game to be played at an electric tempo. He's not stopped at every 2 minutes, which means that players are getting behind the ball and the fans are just getting a bit... I suppose in some ways frustrated with what's happening. There was a period a few 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years ago whereby it felt like you would never get a competitive challenge again in English football, where players couldn't make a tackle, they couldn't slide in, they couldn't do things, and you had sort of people like myself, and particularly players maybe who played in a generation earlier, who were saying this is just now ridiculous. Football's a contact sport. How many times did we hear that? We're now seeing, I think, the best level of football and the best level of refereeing that I've ever seen in English football in my time alive. I have never seen quality of pitches. And about 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, we were also talking about atmospheres weren't the same because of all-seater stadiums and standing. The atmospheres that we're watching, I was at Arsenal last Sunday. I was at Manchester United versus Arsenal, Manchester United versus Liverpool, Liverpool versus Manchester City. Those atmospheres are comparable with the atmospheres that I grew up in and have seen during my playing career. They're absolutely electric. So we can, and that's not me putting my corporate hat on. I said it was crap 5, 6, 7 years ago when we were spending billions of quid in football. Me and you were watching. It was like, what's going on here? But since the introduction, I have to say, of Pep, of Pochettino, of Jurgen Klopp, of Conte, of Tuchel, of all these great managers into the league that we've seen, I might have missed some there, so I'm really sorry. I think that what we've seen is the league rise, the football quality rise, the atmospheres rise. And yet there are things to still sort out. You know, I made the point during commentary, maybe it wasn't the right time to, about Jurgen Klopp saying this, it's not a fair competition because of City above him. You're maybe right, Jurgen. But I'd like you, because you're in a position of real power, to maybe aim some of that compassion down the way to the clubs in the bottom 14 of the league and below that in the Championship and in League 1 and 2.
Who can't compete with Liverpool.
Yeah, who can't compete with Liverpool. So I'd like to see that sort of passed down the way, as well as obviously being concerned about it being up the way. But I definitely think other than that and other things that we need to sort out, the quality is absolutely outstanding. And I have to say, I've looked at the German league and the Spanish league and the other leagues in Europe and thought over maybe 10, 15 years, when we were doing that Champions League final at Wembley between Bayern Munich and Borussia Dortmund, and we did one, I think, in Munich between Atletico Madrid and Real Madrid, didn't we, I think? Where we commentated on it. Was that
in Munich? It was Chelsea.
Was it Chelsea and
Bayern? Chelsea and Bayern in Munich.
Chelsea and Bayern, but then we did one between Atletico and Real, didn't we?
We did, in Lisbon.
In Lisbon, sorry. I've got the city wrong. And we thought, when is English football going to get back, sort of dominate? I mean, Chelsea had that performance under, I've got his name now, Di Matteo, who basically just did that incredible run. But we were struggling in Europe. And we look at the German teams and we look at the Spanish teams and thinking we're miles away from this. And I was saying that on this podcast, and I was saying that in this studio. I'm not saying that anymore. I know Real Madrid won the Champions League last season, but what we're watching out here is a different level. It's absolutely outstanding.
And we wait to see. Anthony Taylor, I spoke to him a couple of weeks ago. I don't think he'd been briefed about what the World Cup style of refereeing will be, and we hope that people are seeing, who have that influence, are seeing this game around the world and thinking, well, let's have a go for that for the world's greatest international competition. And Michael Oliver and Anthony Taylor will fly the flag, and I think proudly for the Premier League.
Yeah, I think that could be the case. Maybe you'll get inconsistency because you've got a group of referees coming together who haven't worked together. The majority of them maybe before. Some of them have, but certainly not on a consistent basis. So you're always having those referees meetings. I remember before a World Cup, before every World Cup or European Championships, you'd have a referee come in and speak to you about what the policy of the tournament's going to be from a refereeing approach. And that'll happen in the next few weeks. And we hope that we see that for the fans to enjoy football matches, for us to enjoy football matches, for the players to enjoy it and the coaches, they want the freedom to be able to play, for there to be competitiveness, for there to be contact, for there to be that aggression. Obviously, there's a line. We don't want two-footed tackles. We don't want players breaking their legs. But we want thrilling, fast, entertaining, exciting football, and we got that today.
There's been a lot going on today that we can't really refer to because we haven't been in a position to see it all. You watch Manchester United.
I watch United.
And, have you got a word on what you saw from United?
Yeah, it wasn't great. There was little signs of it in Europa League in midweek. It wasn't that good. I was impressed with their response to the City game against Goodison Park last Sunday night. I thought it was a really good response. But then against the Cypriot team in midweek, it wasn't great. It was scrappy, but well done. They got a goal late on, but today wasn't very good.
They could have got a goal. You were actually on the pitch.
I didn't see it, yeah. I didn't see it when Marcus Rashford got a chance late on. I didn't see that part because I went out onto the pitch. But I watched the first half, and I thought from set pieces in particular, Newcastle could easily have looked like them. They hit the post. I think it was it Joel Linton that hit the post with a header and then a
double chance.
The bar and then the post. And Newcastle definitely deserved something in that first half, deserved to be in front. I didn't see all of the second half because I went down to do that piece on the pitch, but yeah, it didn't feel like a good performance from United. Eriksen didn't play in the parts that I saw, and it looked like they missed him. They had Fred, Casemiro and Fernandes, and I think when they've been doing really well, apart from at City, which are just a phenomenal team, Eriksen has been a big player, and when he doesn't play, you maybe realise how big a player he is because he connects and glues the team together. He's got that pass through the lines very quickly. He sees things, he looks over his shoulder, he's scanning all the time. It was Paul Scholes that told me that, by the way. I just not through my own punditry, but you know that's the case, and it allows Fernandes really and him. You don't just fall upon Fernandes. It's just you've got two of them then, and I just thought the balance was wrong today in midfield in the first pass. It's difficult, obviously, we've got these gantry monitors that we're watching on, but it just felt that it wasn't quite the same fluidity that we've seen with him in the team. I'll be handing over to people who know better, who are at the game, and speaking to them later. But that's how it looked to me. And Newcastle, I thought, did really well.
While you were watching, I was watching Aston Villa against Chelsea. And Villa had some tremendous chances, really.
Yeah.
But ended up not scoring.
Well, you showed me some of them at half-time. Yeah.
But Steven Gerrard, who we know was a fantastic player, particularly talking as we are from Anfield, the criticism seems to be mounting. How do you see a situation? They've gone, 4 games unbeaten, I think, before today, but the performances hadn't been startling. He'd said himself, we've got to get players to have great moments. We've got good players who are worthy of great moments, but they haven't produced it. And today, even though they had those chances, they didn't do it, and they lost at home to Chelsea. Yeah,
I mean, there has been pressure mounting, hasn't there, in the last couple of months. I hope that the Villa owners hold their nerve. I did say a couple of weeks ago, and this is not just relating, in fact it's not relating to Steven Gerrard and Aston Villa, that I thought that we were coming into a period whereby if clubs were going to change, Premier League clubs and Championship clubs, they'd definitely do it now. Because if you think about it, when you come back from the World Cup, you've got the January transfer window, and you'd want your manager to have the players for a full couple of weeks. How long have we got left now before the World Cup? 3 weeks?
A little bit longer.
So you'd want your manager to have at least 2 or 3
it's a month.
You'd want 2 or 3 weeks, 3 or 4 games to have a look at the squad, assess the squad, and then at least when in the period of when the football stops, they can start to think and plan with the recruitment teams about what that new manager feels about the squad, and maybe some sort of what would be some changing of the squad in the January window. So I just thought that would be something you wouldn't wait until you get to the World Cup and then appoint a new manager who's got to wait 6 weeks. So I think if teams are going to change, it's going to be now, and that's not just about Steven Gerrard. But I hope that Villa's owners stick with him. I think that for me, it's never been an easy club, Villa, just to sort of change and get the culture right and get that sort of step up, even as much as money as they've spent, to get them going from being sort of like where they've been up to there, obviously in the Championship a few years ago, but so you make that jump up into that sort of where West Ham maybe have been or Leicester have been in this last few years. No one's really seemed to be able to do that with Villa. And I have to say, that's not just a Steven Gerrard problem, that's a cultural problem at the club and a sort of mentality problem for many, many years. So I hope he's able to sort it out. But you're right. I mean, Chelsea obviously a decent side. We're doing Chelsea, Manchester United last weekend, and we said I'll watch United, you watch Chelsea.
That's how we work.
Yeah, we'll see. Then at least we've both got an aspect of how they were playing.
Of course, there are midweek games to come as well, aren't there?
Yeah,
So, yeah.
We have got. But just our game that we're doing next Saturday. But you're right. There are midweek games, and we'll see how they go. But I think that there's going to be potentially some changes in managerial positions in this next week or so that clubs give a new manager that period before the World Cup break.
We've had a very, very atmospheric day here. I think I should let you go and get some rest.
I'm going into the studio and I just need to calm down before I get over there. I'm too frantic. I'm like the game, actually.
I've got a couple of paracetamol if the headache's still there.
Thank you. Thanks, Martin.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you.